The importance of the Mississippi River as a conduit into the heart of North America cannot and should never be underestimated, as I continue a deep dive into the significance of the Mississippi River.
The Chevalier Robert de La Salle, the explorer of the Mississippi. In 1682, the Chevalier Robert de La Salle entered upon the great performance of his life, his famous journey upon the bosom of the Father of Waters. Embarking again on the 17th of March, the explorers continued their journey down the stream, coming, after several days, to a place where the river widened into a lake-like expanse. This broad sheet of water was surrounded with villages, 40 being counted on the east side and 34 on the west. On landing in this populous community, they found the villages to be well built, the houses being constructed of clay mixed with straw, and covered with dome-like roofs of canes. Many convenient articles of furniture were found within. These southern Indians proved to be organized under a very different system from that prevailing in the north. There, each tribe was a small republic, electing its chiefs and preserving the liberty of its people. Here, the tribes were absolute monarchies. The head chief or king had the lives and property of all his subjects at his disposal, and kept his court with the ceremonious dignity of a European monarch. When he called on La Salle, who was too sick at that time to go and see him, the ceremony was regal. Every obstruction was removed from his path by a party of pioneers, and the way made level for his feet. The spot where he gave audience was carefully smoothed and covered with showy mats. The dusky autocrat made his appearance richly attired in white robes and preceded by 2 officers, who bore plumes of gorgeously colored feathers. An official followed with 2 large plates of polished copper. The monarch had the courteous dignity and gravity of one born to the throne, though his interview with La Salle was conducted largely with smiles and gestures, as no word spoken could be understood. The travelers remained among this friendly people for several days, rambling through the villages and being entertained in the dwellings, and found them far advanced in civilization beyond the tribes of the north. Father Membre has given the following account of their productions. The whole country is covered with palm trees, laurels of 2 kinds, plums, peaches, mulberry, apple and pear trees of every variety. There are also 5 or 6 kinds of nut trees, some of which bear nuts of extraordinary size. They also gave us several kinds of dried fruit to taste. We found them large and good. They have also many varieties of fruit trees which I never saw in Europe. The season was, however, too early to allow us to see the fruit. We observed vines already out of blossom. Continuing their journey down the stream, the adventurers next came to the country of the Natchez Indians, whom they found as friendly as those they had recently left. La Salle, indeed, was a man of such genial and kind disposition and engaging manners that he made friends of all he met. As Father Membre says, he so impressed the hearts of these Indians that they did not know how to treat us well enough. This was a very different reception to that accorded to Soto and his followers, whose persistent ill-treatment of the Indians made bitter enemies of all they encountered. The voyages, however, were soon to meet Indians of different character. On the 2nd of April, as they floated downward through the narrow channel where a long island divided the stream, their ears were suddenly greeted with fierce war whoops and the hostile beating of drums. Soon a cloud of warriors was seen in the dense border of forest, gliding from tree to tree and armed with strong bows and long arrows. La Salle at once stopped the flotilla and sent 1 canoe ahead, the Frenchman in it presenting the calumet of peace. But this emblem here lost its effect, for the boat was greeted with a volley of arrows. Another canoe was sent with 4 Indians who bore the calumet, but they met with the same hostile reception. Seeing that the Indians were inveterately hostile, La Salle ordered his men to their paddles, bidding them to hug the opposite bank and to row with all their strength. No one was to fire, as no good could come from that. The rapidity of the current and the swift play of the paddles soon sent the canoes speeding down the stream, and though the natives drove their keen arrows with all their strength, and ran down the banks to keep up their fire, the party passed without a wound. A few days more took the explorers past the site of the future city of New Orleans, and to the head of the delta of the Mississippi, where it separates into a number of branches. Here the fleet was divided into 3 sections, each taking a branch of the stream, and very soon they found the water salty and the current becoming slow. The weather was mild and delightful, and the sun shone clear and warm, when at length they came into the open waters of the Gulf, and their famous voyage was at an end. Ascending the western branch again until they came to solid ground, a massive column bearing the arms of France was erected, and by its side was planted a great cross. At the foot of the column was buried a leaden plate on which, in Latin, the following words were inscribed: Louis the Great reigns. Robert Cavelier, with Lord Tonty, ambassador, Zenobia membre, ecclesiastic, and 20 Frenchmen, first navigated this river from the country of the Illinois, and passed through this mouth on the 9th of April, 1682. La Salle then made an address, in which he took possession for France of the country of Louisiana, of all its peoples and productions from the mouth of the Ohio, of all the rivers flowing into the Mississippi from their sources, and of the main stream to its mouth in the sea. Thus, according to the law of nations as then existing, the whole valley of the Mississippi was annexed to France, a magnificent acquisition, of which that country was destined to enjoy a very small section, and finally to lose it all. We might tell the story of the return voyage, and of the fierce conflict which the voyagers had with the hostile Quinipissa Indians, who had attacked them so savagely in their descent, but it will be of more interest to give the account written by Father Membre of the country through which they had passed. The banks of the Mississippi, he writes, for 20 or 30 leagues from its mouth are covered with a dense growth of canes, except in 15 or 20 places, where there are very pretty little hills and spacious, convenient landing places. Behind this fringe of marshy land you see the finest country in the world. Our hunters, both French and Indian, were delighted with it. For an extent of 600 miles in length and as much in breadth, we were told that there are vast fields of excellent land, diversified with pleasing hills, lofty woods, groves through which you might ride on horseback, so clear and unobstructed are the paths. The fields are full of all kinds of game, wild cattle, does, deer, stags, bears, turkeys, partridges, parrots, quails, woodcock, wild pigeons, and ring-doves. There are also beaver, otters, and martens. The cattle of this country surpass ours in size. Their head is monstrous and their look is frightful, on account of the long black hair with which it is surrounded, and which hangs below the chin. The hair is fine, and scarce inferior to wool. We observed wood fit for every use. There were the most beautiful cedars in the world. There was one kind of tree which shed an abundance of gum, as pleasant to burn as the best French pastilles. We also saw fine hemlocks and other large trees with white bark. The cottonwood trees were very large. Of these, the Indians dug out canoes 40 or 50 feet long. Sometimes there were fleets of 150 at their villages. We saw every kind of tree fit for shipbuilding. There is also plenty of hemp for cordage, and tar could be made in abundance. Prairies are seen everywhere. Sometimes they are 50 or 60 miles in length on the riverfront, and many leagues in depth. They are very rich and fertile, without a stone or a tree to obstruct the plough. These prairies are capable of sustaining an immense population. Beans grow wild, and the stalks last several years, bearing fruit. The bean vines are thicker than a man's arm, and run to the top of the highest trees. Peach trees are abundant, and bear fruit equal to the best that can be found in France. They are often so loaded in the gardens of the Indians that they have to prop up the branches. There are whole forests of mulberries, whose ripened fruit we begin to eat in the month of May. Plums are found in great variety, many of which are not known in Europe. Grapevines and pomegranates are common. 3 or 4 crops of corn can be raised in a year. From all this it appears that the good father was very observant, though his observation, or the information he obtained from the Indians, was not always to be trusted. He goes on to speak of the tribes whose people and customs he found very different from the Indians of Canada. They have large public squares, games, and assemblies. They seem mirthful and full of vivacity. Their chiefs have absolute authority. No one would dare to pass between the chief and the cane torch which burns in his cabin and is carried before him when he goes out. All make a circuit around it with some ceremony. Among all the rivers of the earth, the Mississippi ranks first. It has its rivals in length and volume, but stands without a rival as a noble channel of commerce, the pride of the West and the glory of the South.
I'm Mark Vinette, and I hope you're enjoying the ride.